I want to just say thanks to BN folks for asking me to come down. We got a monitor set up in Hemmes Springs yesterday, and I'm sorry it wasn't a little bit earlier. Friday, I was out running around dealing with the Tres Lagunas fire. I was over in Las Vegas, and the Weather Service called me up and asked me how things were going, and I said, well, a new start just started in Thompson Ridge. Can you start looking at it to see where the smoke's going, to see what's going to happen? But dealing with a couple fires has been a challenge. But I have a few questions for you guys. So first of all, how many folks are over 65 in this room? All right, keep up your hands. How many of you have young children? Okay, not so much. How many folks have things like respiratory disease or COPD, and you don't have to raise your hand, but you know who you are? But these are the populations we're most concerned about in terms of smoke. People with pre-existing conditions, people over 65, young children. And what we see is typically a significant increase of hospital admissions during these smoke events, what we're having here. Every morning, I would expect in Hemmes Springs that you're going to see unhealthy levels of smoke through this entire incident. As long as there's active fire. Things like B is talking about, low RH recoveries, active burning all night long, that smoke's just going to come right down the valley in here. So folks up in La Cueva, folks here, folks in the Pueblo, you know, I think you're going to feel some pretty difficult times in terms of smoke. And so, you know, you need to look out for each other, but also know some things that you can do to protect yourself. And I think Lieutenant Governor Sanchez talked about Department of Health has a really great website up. We work very closely. We're on call with his staff every single morning, getting out messages. So that nmtracking.org/fire is a great place to go to find information about what you can do to protect yourself. You know, but if you know you're in these kind of at-risk populations, you know, if you have a place to go for a little while, that getting a few days of clean air makes a huge, huge difference to folks. So it's something to consider. But I think that, you know, that's the other thing. And the other thing is we do have a monitor in town, but it's usually, by the time I get the data back at my office, it's an hour late. And so one thing we're really encouraging people to do is find a landmark that you know is a rough distance away from you, maybe 5 miles or less. If you can't see that, that's a very good indication that air quality is not really good to be outside. So we really encourage people to do anything they can to get out of the smoke. And I know in this canyon, there's probably nothing 5 miles away that you can see. So if you can't see the walls of the canyon, you know, I think that's a pretty good indication. But if you are in a place where you do have a landmark that's a little bit farther away, we encourage you to use those visual clues to give you a sense about what air quality is like. The good news is the smoke should lift pretty quickly in the mornings every day, and you've probably noticed that, and you've been through plenty of fires if you've been here enough to know this is kind of the standard operating procedure to somewhat, that you'll have smoke every night in the morning, and then it should clear pretty quickly. So, you know, I encourage you to go do your activities outside later in the day or midday. But that's, I think, you know, my main message to folks here. You know, I think you probably lived through these quite a bit, but I think the current conditions we have with the really dry conditions and low recoveries at night, I think we're getting potential for some relief this weekend, maybe. I don't know, RH, but I would just count on having smoke every morning here. I don't know if you have any other questions for me specifically. Yes, sir. Going off the track, I think.
The cause of the fire is now under investigation. I thought it was pretty clear right from the start that it was caused by a tree falling on power lines.
I'm going to let somebody else handle that.
Can you answer that? Really? Really, Josh? Come on.
He's smarter than you.
You know, the reason that we did under investigation, I think you guys have heard, that it's not official, and I haven't heard the final report back from the law enforcement. So until that happens, it's not going to be official. So, sorry.
Okay, other questions? Yes?
There seems to be a lot of state officers going up and down Highway 4. I was just wondering why. Yeah.
Well, the reason why is that we have a lot of fire resources that are out there on the road. And then we have a lot of public that's out there. It's a great viewpoint for the fire. So the reason that we're doing that is to make sure that we're checking the speed, not only for the public, but for our firefighters. Because sometimes as operational people, we get focused on the fire. We want to make sure that we're safe. So it's a safety issue on the driving aspect. And then also we've got vehicles, we've got several locations of the camp. We have the main base camp, and then we have a fueling spot out there. So we've got people turning in, and we just want to check the speed on them.
Do you have any reason to think that the highway will get closed?
No. I don't. Now to say it's not something, are you talking just Highway 4
Yes.
in general? I really don't think so. But with monsoons, with the weather coming in, I wouldn't put any money on that. This-
All warranties aside, how many acres in the plant contain?
25,000?
That's some dignifier is now.
No. Hang on, that's it. Let me get my pointer out. Now, within that black hash mark area.
How big is the fire now?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, as of this morning, we're about 2,200 acres. 45. Okay, 4,500 acres. I would say it's probably, could have doubled in size today.
And you're gonna burn 25,000 acres?
Well, we don't want to do that. But the reason that we've got this area is to get, it's the highest percentage of success for the firefighters to hold that fire within this box. So that's why when I say this, yeah, we could burn 25,000 acres. The only reason that we're going to do this is because the fire's going to force our hand to do that too. And this is what we saw with this push out of here, up Redondo, and what it's doing now. It's almost to this side here. And how dry the conditions are, it could be, if it did this in one day, and I know I'm in your area, if it did this push in one day, it could do that push in one day. And so we could do that.
People call out-of-town people who own property in the area to find out about if their houses have been damaged, if things, people are calling me, I'm a realtor, I'm controlling the property and stuff, I don't know who to refer them to.
Sure.
Do we have the numbers?
Yes, we have a fire information number right now that will go through tonight, but tomorrow morning, the new fire information numbers, there are two numbers. Actually, the fire information team will be moving out to the incident command post. Previously, we were at the VC administrative site, and we're going to the command post tomorrow. And those two numbers are 541-787-4342 or 541-787-4343.
Could you repeat that?
It's specifically for fire information.
Could you repeat that again, please?
One more time. 541-787-4342 and 4343. Somebody else had it.
Yeah, I'm certainly very concerned about this fire, but I'm also thinking beyond this fire, since this is early in the season. One of the comments that the Lieutenant Governor made was, all right, our front lane's closed camping right now, but we're gonna open it up. I'm not only concerned for camping in the local area, but simple fire ranges throughout the state. And all you need is one dummy who's not gonna put the fire out. Have it canned, all fires and all campgrounds at this point, or where are we on that? I mean, it seems to me that
You
the
know,
whole thing is a tinderbox right now.
you know, it certainly is.
I
Tony, did you wanna?
From the state forestry perspective, we have fire restrictions on state and private property that are, so fires, any open flames completely restricted with very few exceptions. The federal government also has restrictions, and the Lance Caldera folks talked about restrictions specifically. I think they've got closures, and the U.S. Forest Service is also going to have some restrictions on U.S. Forest Service property. Statewide, we know that this is a big issue in terms of human-caused fires, and as we get into fire season, we've been in restrictions for a few weeks, and so far it's been fairly effective for unplanned, unwanted human-caused fires from the state forestry perspective.
So I'm Linda Riddle, District Ranger for Jemez District, and about 2 weeks ago or so, we went into stage 1 fire restrictions on the Santa Fe. Tomorrow, we are going into stage 2 fire restrictions on the Santa Fe. Stage 2 restrictions do not allow campfires, charcoal fires, wood fires, anywhere on the forest. And the Pecos, Las Vegas district, because they've got such a much bigger fire over there, they're going to be closing that district tomorrow, is my understanding. We have a number of criteria that we use to determine, when we go into these different stages. And part of that is so that we can be consistent with our partner agencies. And one of our partner agencies is the Vice Caldera. So Vice Caldera and the Santa Fe National Forest, we try to go walk hand in hand as the way we do our fire restrictions, same as with the state. All right. Now there might be some differences that you see, like Forest Service is higher elevation, and one of the state lands are lower elevation. So there could be some differences, but we try to be as consistent as possible so that people don't get too confused about where fire restrictions are and where they're not. Over the winter, the Southwest Coordinating Group, which is made up of multiple state and federal agencies, went through a process to gain some additional consistency on fire restrictions. And so now we just have stage 1, stage 2, and closure or partial closure, where in the past there was another stage in there, but right now we're just stage 1, stage 2. Smoking, you have to be inside a vehicle under stage 2 restrictions, where before you could be in an area where there was no vegetation.
They don't stay inside the vehicle, and they throw cigarettes up.
Well, we can't,
Can't we stop them at the soda dam so they can't go any farther?
I don't think so. I wish it worked that way. I wish it worked that way. One of the things that, on one hand, we think, okay, if we close the forest to all forest visitors, then we're all going to be safer. All right. Well, on one hand, that's correct. But on the other hand, then we don't have all of the responsible people out there keeping an eye on the forest and being eyes and ears for us and calling in something, because we have a very small staff, and like the Jemez District is 200,000 or 300,000 acres, and so we can't be everywhere. So sometimes it's actually better and safer to have some people, have more people out in the forest. And I know that's difficult to grasp, but a couple winters ago, we had the facilities down here, one of the fishing access facilities, a couple of the fishing access facilities was open all winter. And what started happening was we started getting vandalism inside the building because there wasn't enough regular people coming through there to keep an eye on the place. So, so that was a big problem.
So I drove up 376 last weekend, and it was probably 7 o'clock, and there was multiple fires.
Right, so we're going out.
Nobody to check that.
Well,
Are you gonna dedicate any resources to that?
Yes, we are dedicating resources to that, and we are citing people. So we have two situations right now. We're in stage 1 restrictions right now. So last weekend we were in stage 1 restrictions. So campfires were allowed in campgrounds, right? But they weren't allowed anywhere else. So we end up with two situations. We have people who are at their campsite with their fire. All right, if we catch them, we can cite them, and we do. Sometimes, though, we find the fire after they've left, and so it's very difficult to cite anybody under those conditions. And that's so when we go into stage 2 restrictions, we will be going out and patrolling and citing people. We have brought in an additional 4 fire prevention patrols on the Jemez district to help us do this task, as well as an additional law enforcement officer. And then we also have 2 additional engines, in addition to the 2 engines that we already have, and they're also, everybody's out patrolling. And so we have been able to find these abandoned campfires and put them out. But if compliance does not, if people do not comply, then we will be forced to go into we will be forced to close the forest. But it's not that easy to close the forest. There are multiple entries. And so it's not that easy.
Is anybody gonna patrol after 4 o'clock? Because people out there that are camping don't have their fires going in the middle of the day.
Yeah, we have patrols. Ma'am, you had your hand up for a while.
Considering that you said that this fire is just raging up there and at the elevation of, what is it, 8,000 feet?
Well, the peak is almost 11.
Okay, so I would consider that very dry in the forest. And today they had on the news that the vehicles were put down as being closed on an emergency basis. Why can we not be closed on that status also? There are people, I don't care what you say because.
I don't care what I say, so it doesn't matter what I say. I'm not going to answer that question.
People are irresponsible. Last year we had 80 unattended campfires up here in the Jemez.
Those people will still go. So,
and I agree with my neighbor here. You guys do not patrol at night when people are out there with their campfires.
we do, but we can't be everywhere.
And that's the other point. If you guys are undermanned and underfunded, why are we not shut down? Why do we have to beg and plead for the Forest Service for our lands and our houses to be protected up here in the Jemez? That's what I would like to know. My neighbors would like to know that.
We have, as I explained, we have criteria that we go by, which we go from one stage of restrictions to another stage. Right now we're going to stage 2. I believe soon we will be going into closure, but you know, there's a lot of things that we take into consideration.
You know what, I know that we could go on and on and on about the fire restrictions, but let's actually focus on if you have any questions about the fire, and then afterwards, we'll have the agency's people here so that you can talk to them specifically about what's going on. So
the fire is doing very well, it's just a prevention.
Closing the forest is not the answer, though. Closing the forest is not the answer.
do we have any other questions about the Thompson Ridge fire? Or this, yeah, right here.
Some of the smoke almost looked a little bluish. Please. Thank you. Go ahead.
Some of the smoke almost seemed to have a bit of a blue tint to it today when I was looking at it. Is the fire retardant like lowly flammable? Or is it something else, or just reflection from the rest of the sky?
You know, it could be a number of things depending on what's burning and probably how much moisture is in the fuel. So I'm not sure exactly where it is. You know, if it's darker, it means it's not combusting all the way, or it is combusting all the way. Yeah, you know, but it depends on the level of combustion. You think, I do know what I'm doing, but I just don't remember that. But it just depends on the intensity of the fire at that point.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at though is, does the fire retardant burn at all?
It could.